One of the young entrepreneurs that I met, actually, I have the honor of introducing now, I actually met him at an event in New York about a year ago, and he reminded me so much of me. He is a young entrepreneur who was considered one of the 20 most promising entrepreneurs under the age of 20 by This Day magazine newspaper in Nigeria. When I met him, he told me that he started out also as a young publisher, a student publisher, just like myself. And he said he would follow up. He gave me his business cards, he took mine, and he said he would follow up. And the next day, he followed up, which I have to say is very rare. I meet so many people who take the business card and who never follow up. And he followed up the next day, and I started reading more and more about him. And it turns out that he has started a venture called Fora.co. And he was also named a Young Global Shaper by the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2012, the same year that Ashish was named a Young Global Leader. So we have a lineage here. His name is Aboyeji Iyinolwa, and I would like to introduce him with great pride. So welcome and share your vision talk with us.
Great. First of all, I would like to thank Adetayo for getting me here. It's certainly an honor to be speaking to you today. Funny, it's the first time I'm seeing him since that event, and it's just exciting to see him because I've read a lot about Claude, and his story is amazing, and I really hope I get there one day. So quite briefly, I'm just going to share a couple thoughts about higher education in Africa, which is what I work in. And today we'll just be talking about lotteries, learning, and legacy. Great. So the first thing is basically, after almost a year of working in higher education in Africa, I basically have come to the realization that higher education in Africa is pretty much a lottery, right? It's probably the largest lottery in Africa. So every year, you have 2 million young people in Nigeria alone take the SAT equivalent, right? And barely 300,000 can get into a university. And what's really interesting about this lottery is that when you look at it in terms of how many universities are available, they're essentially fighting for spots in just about 25 universities. 75% of all the students in Nigeria are just in 25 universities out of 104. So it just gives you a sense of how dysfunctional the system is. And this is basically a funnel that describes how lucky you are. Because for those of you who are African here, you are one of the 5% of the 6% that are going to get access to higher education in Africa. It's a terrible situation. And then we've left 93% of young people out in the cold without any kind of tertiary education that can allow them to grow their economies and get jobs that are sustainable and stable. It's a terrible issue. But we're not here to mourn. Basically, the problems are that it's not just funding, it's not just lack of teachers. It is the fact that the system is overregulated and dysfunctional. Essentially, there's a lot of money going in right now, especially in Nigeria. And there are professors, but you have a situation where over three-quarters of all the staff in the university in Nigeria are non-teaching staff. And there's only a quarter that are employed as teaching staff. So essentially, we're spending 3 times as much on non-teaching staff, many of who don't have bachelor's degrees. And that's just the extent of what we're facing. So what's basically happened is that because of how dysfunctional our system is, we have created a $10 billion foreign education industry. And many of the people here today are proofs of the productiveness of that industry. But it's great that you're getting an amazing education here. It's also quite bad for our economy because we're bleeding forex and we're creating lots of money for other people. And what's really interesting is basically the online education is accelerating that basically gap so to speak. There are now more people getting foreign credentials from foreign universities online. So they're going to universities like University of Liverpool. Right now, if you go on LinkedIn and you search University of Liverpool and lives in Nigeria, you're going to find about 3,000 entries. It could have increased between when I checked it and now. So it just gives you a sense of what's going on, and the market is growing at 25% every year, pretty much. And they're always revising the forecast because it's always more than they think it will be. And I just want to quickly share, just give you a sense of what's really interesting about what's happening now in foreign education, before I briefly go into telling you what I do and why it's important that we build something like what we're building. Now, back in the 1990s, the demographic of who got a foreign education was, 15, 18, year-olds basically coming to America for the first time. They want to get a bachelor's. But what we've seen over the last 10 years is that demographic has changed. You now have people who are coming here who have at least 3 years of work experience, and they're looking for a professional education. It makes perfect sense when you think about it from their perspective. Getting a foreign education in Nigeria will triple your income. So you come in maybe at 50,000 because you had a certificate from a university in Nigeria. You get a foreign certificate, you triple your income. So people are willing to make those sacrifices. And right now, we're just a couple years away, and I actually suspect we might be closer than we think, from educating more master's degree holders and graduate students outside of Nigeria and many other African countries than we are in Nigeria. Some African countries have already crossed the Rubicon. So you have Sao Tome and Principe educating more people outside of their country than in their country. And a lot of French-speaking countries are about to join them. So it's an incredible time, for foreign universities. Not so much of an incredible time for local universities, because they're definitely bleeding the cash. And obviously not a great time for the economy, because this is obviously putting downward pressure on Forex. And basically, just to give you a sense of how I came into this business, I went to university in North America. I went to University of Waterloo. We like to call ourselves the MIT of the North. Pinnis envy there. And basically, I spent $150,000 on that education. We could afford it, so I was able to do that. But there are a lot of my friends who don't have that privilege, who couldn't spend $150,000 on an education. And basically, I built this company for them. And what we're doing is we've built right now Africa's largest discovery platform for online master's degrees. We're starting with master's degrees and professional credentials from all around the world. So all the top online universities essentially are listed on our platform, and students can find out more information about them. But what really makes us special, because anybody could do that, is that we provide tuition financing if you are a salaried worker. So right now, if you're a salaried worker and you want to go to UNC, which is $90,000, you can come to us, and we will give you the money to make that possible. And we will take it out of your salary every month, at a healthy interest rate, of course. But we will still take it out of your salary. But more importantly, one of the big things, that a lot of business schools kind of push is, we provide this socialization environment. But we're also providing that socialization environment. You walk into any of our learning centers, you meet your peers in the industry, and you can have the same experience as you would have in a business school at MIT in Nigeria, Lagos, without ever even knowing where Muritala Mohammed Airport is. So where are we going with this? And that kind of brings me to the meat of this talk, which is really about legacy. I mean, a lot of people have talked about why you should come back, but I tend to have the same thinking as Ashish does. No one is begging you to come back. If you want to build a big business right now and you are African, you cannot build that business anywhere else but in Africa. It is simply the fact. And the people who are going to get in now at the ground game are literally going to be the people who make the industries of tomorrow. And it's happened before, right? The UBAs, the Sahara Energies, these are all the Etisalats, all companies that were built by people who had the vision to zero in on where they could make an incredible impact, but also build a legacy, have 1 billion people using their products. And that's exactly why I went back. So I left Canada last year, and I went straight back to Africa to build a legacy. And so what's our legacy going to look like? Basically, we have the largest population of young people in the world right now. And we are going to have the largest population of young working professionals. This graph kind of gives you a picture of what the demographic trend looks like. All those young professionals are going to need an education. And it will not be possible to cram them into physical institutions. It won't work. So we have to build the university of the future, which will have to be online. And one of the things people tell me, oh, well, you're going to try and build an online university in Nigeria, or you're going to try and build an industry for online universities in Nigeria. It will never work because it's never been done before. Problem is, it has been done before. The largest university in the world is not in North America. It is in Brazil. And this is a story that absolutely inspires me, because there was a guy in Brazil who basically built a university in 1994, so 20 years ago. And now it has 1 million students. Brazilians, all Brazilians. And it costs $1,500 to go to school at this university. And they're a billion-dollar company. They're very successful. They've never ventured outside of Brazil. So that shows you what kind of opportunity is present in Africa, even if you just piece together 1 or 2 different countries. And that's our vision. What I'm trying to bring to fruition is basically a legacy, an education legacy. I'm trying to leave a higher education institution that my children's children will go to. Not because they don't have options, but because it's a world-class institution that will foster local talent and make it possible for them to compete on a global scale. I always like to end with this quote by Mandela. It always seems impossible until it's done. And I'm very sure it will be possible in this case. Thank you.